All things considered, the success of Dark Souls simply defies logic. From Software tossed players into an unrelenting labyrinth filled with brutal enemies and opaque mechanics, offering little guidance or assistance along the way. Truth be told, more players were likely to see Master Chief pop up in a round of Gears of War than ever see the end credits. People persevered, and they found something quite rare in today's casual market. A remorseless challenge that educated and rewarded in equal measure. Simply put, Dark Souls was quite unlike anything else. A sequel wasn't really required as much as it was demanded, and thankfully, Dark Souls 2 delivers every bit of follow-up that fans could have hoped for. It's both overwhelmingly epic in scope and unrelentingly brutal in its challenge. The only thing to come as a surprise about Dark Souls 2 is that it isn't surprising at all. If you've played through the original, you know what to expect. A rock-hard challenge that rewards the cautious and punishes the impatient, an incomprehensible yet utterly engaging mythology, and of course, an RPG experience quite unlike any other. Punishment is still central to Dark Souls' philosophy. Even the lowliest skeleton dude with a stick can send a skilled player hurtling back to a bonfire sans their souls and pride. If you're worried that Dark Souls 2 would be taking a difficulty drop, you can rest easy, though that isn't to say it isn't a little more accessible. A few concessions have been made along the way, though this isn't a bad thing. The game actually explains some of its surface mechanics to you now, and on occasion, even points you in the right direction instead of letting you aimlessly wander gothic wastelands for hours on end. It's taken away some of the mastery, but deep down, you know this just saves you a trip to Wikipedia at 2 AM when you're left sobbing at the feet of the three guardians. Combat is still at the core of the Dark Souls experience. It's a system that revolves around patience, careful timing, and using the right equipment for the task at hand, though the latter isn't quite as crucial or confusing as it was the first time around. In fact, Dark Souls 2 is a decent selection of weapons available from the start of the game if you can find them, which, if upgraded at a steady pace, will scale adequately alongside your player stats for the majority of the game. Dark Souls 2 isn't without its flaws, however. The parry system has been tweaked, and by tweaked we mean pretty much destroyed. In the original Dark Souls, several of the toughest enemies could be overcome with a well-timed parry, which would leave your opponent open for a really awesome special strong attack. There's no such bonus to be found here. All you're going to find is that your stamina meter takes a beating, and you're left reeling from the added exertion. It's a bizarre omission and takes away one of the series' fundamental strategic approaches. Its absence is clearly felt when confronting some of the tougher boss battles in the latter half of the game. In many ways, Dark Souls 2 outshines its predecessor. There's nothing quite like the sense of achievement gained from defeating a Dark Souls boss. That gratification is magnified here in a much more ambitious sequel boasting a world built as an elaborate jigsaw puzzle that demands to be carefully constructed piece by the player. And that's where Dark Souls 2 fulfills its promise to the player. It's a world of suffocating isolation with only a glimmer of hope that you'll emerge through the other side victorious. But its mysteries linger in the mind and spur you onwards through its toughest moments. It's not a cruel game by any means, but one that never wastes an opportunity to challenge, and those preconditioned to its agenda will know to take every step tentatively, shield raised, and hand steady to face whatever dangers lay ahead. For anyone who survived the ash and grey trial of Dark Souls, there isn't much in the sequel that will come as a particular surprise. What they will find instead is a lot of logic, a refinement to mechanics, an enhancement to the world itself, and a few tweaks that both give and take a little greatness from the franchise. Dark Souls 2 is brilliant, cunning, and utterly addictive, a worthy follow-up to one of the best games ever made. Dark Souls 2, you get a 9 out of 10 from X1, and to read the full written review, be sure to swing over to www.xb1.co.uk.